Hi, it's Christina Myers, host of The Stina Life. In this episode, we're going to talk about the phenomenon of aliens and how the collective conversation is being refocused around it at this time. And I'll share some very personal experiences that have shaped my own viewpoint on this subject. Let's get into it. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the podcast. It's so nice to have you joining me again this week. And for all of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. I am so grateful and honored to share this energy with you. Well, we are officially in August. I cannot believe it. July doesn't even feel like it was even a thing. It just flew by so fast in just a blink of an eye. And I feel like the timelines are really just continuing to just go at lightning speed. We are really shifting in so many ways. And this has been a really interesting lead up. I talked about this in the August astrological forecast as the shedding process that we're going through. And my gosh, the last few days, the amount of shifts, especially with the full moon in Aquarius, has been a process of letting go of old patterns, of old storylines, of relationships, of jobs, all of it. It has been amplified with this super full moon. And man, all the timelines that we've ever lived, all the lifetimes are merging into each other right now. And it's no coincidence that this amplification of emotions and experiences and storylines that we have continued to repeat lifetime after lifetime is amplifying right now. And we have to let stuff go. We have to let stuff go. And it's a really hard process when we do have to let things go because it is a death process. It is a releasing process. It's a time to grieve because there's so much familiarity with things. And even if it's a toxic thing, even if it's just a dysfunctional thing, we become very familiar with some of this dysfunctional patterns. And we hold on and hold on and hold on until we're forced to not hold on any longer. And I am seeing this at such a deep level with my clients, with my personal relationships. It's a really hard time. So if you are going through this, if you're experiencing this right now, just know I'm sending you lots of love. It is not an easy process at all, but just go within. Take the time to really feel into this and to allow yourself and give yourself permission to grieve. I think we try and move past grief and not really sit in it. And it's a very important process to sit in it because if we don't deal with it at the time it happens, trust me, it's going to come up later down the road and we're going to deal with it in other ways. So the topic this week that I really wanted to focus on is really what's happening in the public conversation, the amplification of things in the public conversation right now. And last week in the United States, there was a hearing on UAP sightings, or what we have always considered UFO sightings. That's always been the vernacular, but they've changed it to UAP recently. And it was really interesting. I didn't watch the live hearings at all of these folks testifying in front of Congress. But I've watched some of the snippets coming out of it. And, they've been talking about the fact that the government has known about this at least back to the 1930s and probably way before then. And so anyway, I was watching the out clips of this and kind of giggling to myself a bit because my guides have been telling me for some time, really for the last few years, that this is going to become a conversation that's going to be more prominent, especially in 2023, because the consciousness of the planet is shifting so much. And there's also so many shifts happening within power, within the geopolitical. And I've talked about this a lot in a lot of the episodes that I've created for this podcast about the shift of the geopolitical systems and the fact that the energy is really supporting a breakdown and a reckoning of these geopolitical forces across the globe. And so I thought this was really interesting because this is very much aligning with the information I've been receiving and also the astrological information as we're moving into the Aquarius age. I really feel, Aquarius is very much aligned to this alien energy. And so it was very top of mind for me to talk about this. So it's funny because I have a friend who also has a podcast, my friend Jason, who I've known since I was a wee lad back in the day. And he has a podcast called One Day Closer to Dead. And he's actually been talking about this for some time on his show, especially about the information that David Grush, I believe you say Grush, who was one of the panel members who had testified in front of Congress. He's been out kind of talking to the public. He's been giving interviews publicly around his own and personal experiences. And then, of course, he was in front of Congress front and center. And so Jason's been covering this a lot on his show about what's really been uncovered, and they've done a nice deep dive on it. I've also been seeing a lot of videos popping up recently from Dr. Stephen Greer, who is the founder of the Center of the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and probably one of the most well-spoken and articulate people that I have ever heard on this subject. And his understanding and ability to communicate what he understands is very much aligned with my own personal experiences within this realm. And I wanted to kind of take this, episode to really dive into my own perspective and my own experiences as an energetics practitioner, and also from an energy perspective of how I see this, how this has come through to me, and what's kind of going on collectively. So a few years ago, I was sent a video from a friend. It was a practitioner who had actually done this video. And this practitioner was very much in tune. I would say that they were able to really get information from their guides, or really tap into their abilities, their intuitive abilities, to be able to see timelines of things that were happening in the future. And that was kind of she was starting to get information, I think around 2015, 2016. And most of this that she was talking about was around the events of 2020. But it also included some information about contact from other energy beings, other life forms. And what she was saying was that we would have an increase in contact as a humanity with beings that were off planet, but that this would first start to happen through people who are on the earth plane that were more tuned in to frequency and energy, especially energetics practitioners who are very much tuned in to consciousness that is beyond the three-dimensional ability to see things. And it would become much more common in the vernacular and the consciousness of the public as we started to lead up into 2002, 2003. And that's really when it started. If you think about like last year in 2022, we started to hear more mainstream media covering and showing video of these UAPs, and the military sightings of these UAPs. So this was very much forefront in the conversation over the past 18 months. And so this leading up to this hearing last week, we've had much more concrete conversations and much more, I would say, concrete information coming forward regarding at least the military's experience and people within the government institutions of their experiences around this. So it's becoming much more in the public conversation. Now, why is it coming up into the public conversation? I've got some thoughts around that, which I'll get into here in a little bit. So my own personal experience, about a year and a half ago, I was called to do some very important work on a property. And my guides came to me, and a couple of other practitioners came to me and asked me to prepare and do this work with them. And while I was preparing for this work, I was called to see a practitioner who I hadn't seen before, to do some body work, to really attune my body to get it ready for this work that we were going to be doing. And while I was in this session with her, she started to channel light language. And it was a very unique language that I had heard a little bit, but I never actually had it spoken in a session, like live with me. And if you've never heard this before, it kind of sounds like a foreign language, but you can tell it's not a foreign language that's of Earth. But it really carries a frequency, a vibration, and a frequency with it. And so it's quite different. And it's actually very soothing. If you have ever listened to it, a lot of it can be very soothing. Now, what was interesting about my experience is that when she was channeling through this light language, I could actually understand it. I was receiving it in my energy field, and then it was translating in my brain. It took a little bit, it was like a delayed reaction. And then I was able to translate it. And what it was saying was that they were telling me that they would be assisting me and us with the work that I was getting ready to do. And then as a lead up to that, they began to show me images of what they were going to be doing. And they were showing me themselves as where they're going to be located while we were doing this work. So when we went to go do the work, the day that we had chosen to do the work, it was interesting because we decided, the information from one of the other practitioners who was with me was that we needed to journey in through the heart and use drums to do that. And so the day came and we were journeying in through our heart chakras and drumming. And when this was happening, I got a flood, literally a flood of this bright blue light and this huge energy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I knew immediately it was galactic. I knew immediately that it was almost an activation for me. Not almost, it was an activation. So after we got done with this, I ended up reaching back out to that practitioner who I'd seen. And I said, just curious, do you understand what you're channeling? Like, can you translate it? And she said, no. And I said, well, interesting. I understood all that came through. And she was like, okay, this is really interesting. Can you come over and let's do another session, but let's kind of just play? And I was like, yeah. So I showed back up for another session. And what was interesting is that she was able to immediately get into my energy field. And usually it takes a little bit of time to get into an energy field. She's immediately able to get into mine, though. And she starts channeling light language through immediately. What was so interesting is that I immediately felt the presence of a Native American elder, and it was masculine. And it actually came into my body, came through me, and it started channeling through Native language. And it was telling me that Native American language is light language. And I'm like, of course it is, because the natives have always been closely connected with the cosmos. They've always been closely connected with the Great Spirit. And in many cases, light beings have been integrated within these groups for thousands of years. And, if you watch shows like Ancient Aliens, which my husband's addicted to, so I kind of come in and out and see some of this stuff, it's very prominent that they're not quite sure about some of these ancient sites like the Egypt, like Machu Picchu. That how in the world can people actually construct these sites in these time frames without some assistance? And there's also hieroglyphics and things like that have these paintings that, these sculptures and drawings that look like alien beings, right? If you've ever read a really great book called Return of the Bird Tribes, this gives a pretty good explanation of the process and the integration of light beings being integrated within Native American tribes, and the fact that they left the earth plane when man started to kill each other. So that's an interesting perspective if you want to kind of get that perspective. perspective. I also felt very much aligned with that because I had taken a friend to see a practitioner who specializes in past life work. And one of the lifetimes she had lived that came through in the session was that she was a light being who was integrated in a native tribe. And so that had become on my radar a long time ago. So going back to my session. So the Native American elder came through. He began to channel through. He began to tell us that Native American language is light language. It's all connected. It's interconnected to each other. Probably why they wanted to get rid of the Native American tribes, because they could see beyond the 3D veil. So then we notice this being enters the room, and both of us see this, by the way, not just me. We both see this, and it is a blue being, and it is extremely feminine in nature. It has a feminine energy. It is very loving, very kind, and very gentle, extremely peaceful. And it asked for my permission to connect with me, and I was like, yes, of course. And it came above my head, and I could feel it place something in there. And then what happened is I could see my physical body get transported to a white room with this white table, and I was placed on this white table. And then all of a sudden I see like 3 or 4 more of these blue feminine beings all around me. And I can tell they're doing some work on me. And then it was very fast. It seemed very fast. It probably was a very long time, but time didn't really mean anything. And I came back into the present time and space, and we wrapped up our session. And we both were like, okay, did you see this? Yeah, I saw this. So she and I both saw the blue being. Now, she didn't see me get transported off, but then I told her about it. So we went downstairs to her kitchen, and we were talking about all of this and talking about some other things. And all of a sudden I could see out of the corner of my eye this blue being staring at me. She's like kind of waiting for me. And I was like, I gotta go. I need to use the restroom though. Can I use the restroom? And then I'm gonna go. And she said, yeah. So I go in and I'm washing my hands, and I look at the mirror above the sink, and I can tell my eyes are completely a different color and a different shape. They were like this crystal blue color, and I have more of a blue-green eye color normally. And I'm like, whoa. Like literally, I have had a change in my eye shape and my eye color. So I get in my car and I'm driving down the interstate, and all of a sudden I feel this being in the car with me. And it was like the donkey and Shrek jumping up and down, and was so excited. And then I started channeling light language through me. And it was this very high pitched, very like childlike, fun language coming through me. And every time it would see an animal, a bird especially, or a homeless person, it would go crazy. It would get super excited. So I'm driving home and I'm like, how in the world am I going to tell my husband about this? What is going on? So I got home and I got through our back door, and of course my dogs come running up, and they know something's totally different in my energy field. They can feel it, and they're like freaking out a little bit. And all of a sudden this thing starts talking to them excitedly through me. And they were like, oh my gosh, they were like, what is this? Right? So then I'm like, okay, you have to calm down. Like, you can't talk. Like, I have to go talk to my husband. So I go upstairs to his office, and I am like, he just knew. Like, he knew something was up. He's like, oh my God, what did you do now? And so I start telling him about my experience. And then all of a sudden, I start just channeling through this language uncontrollably. Like, I cannot stop it. And he was witness to all of it. And I was able to record it too. I was able to have an opportunity to record it a day later. Well, after a few days, this began to subside. And then I would only have it pop in and out every now and then, especially if I was out in nature. It seemed to be very active. So during this time, I began to connect with other people here on Earth that were also channelers of this light language. And in March of this year, I was planning to take a trip with my family, and I received very clear instructions from my guides. Now, they do this from time to time, that I was going to be doing some work while I was on vacation. And I'm like, listen, this is my family vacation, and I am not working on my family vacation. And they were like, yeah, you are. Sorry, but you need to do some work while you're there. And it's not going to be hard. It's going to be pretty easy because it's just going to be when you're out and about, but you need to do it. And what I didn't realize, I got a download and I got a link to a podcast actually, and it was all about round grid work. And I was like, oh, okay. So I listened to this podcast before I leave, and I'm like, oh, this is easy. I can do this. No problem. So we arrive at our location, and it's like midday. We eat some dinner, go back, and I am in the middle of doing this 40-day meditation. So I go into meditation that night, and all of a sudden, here they come. And they throw me in a spaceship, and they take me around the city, and they show me what needs to be done. And then I begin to have my hands activated, and they literally turn on my hands, and I start channeling light language through my hands. Now, light language can be done through the voice, through the hands, or it can be written, and codes can start coming through in a written form, as well as you can channel, like free write and channel things through guides and through other beings. So, needless to say, that was an experience because I was literally like on tour buses where we were at, and I was activating people's feet. And as they were walking through the city, they were doing grid work. And I was having some other really crazy experiences that whole week while I was there. So let's just say over the past 5 months, it has been an intense ramp up for me and an amplification of this energy. And I have had some very, very interesting experiences and encounters with many different types of energetic beings that are not physically here on the earth plane. They are coming through from other dimensions. So let me explain a few things that I'm seeing out there, and then the reality from my experience and perspective about what I think is going on. First of all, every single experience that I have personally had with a light being or channeling through light language or codes or whatever you want to call it. If you want to, I call it a light being. You can call it an alien, whatever you want. It has been very, very gentle. It has been extremely kind, and it has been led with love. It's truly about love, and it's truly about unity consciousness, period. Okay, now let me address the energetics behind this. So every single thing in our world and our universe is energy. Everything. At the subatomic level, every single thing is energy. And every single piece of energy carries a vibration and a frequency with it. So everything in the universe has a vibration and a frequency, including you. Now, being on the earth requires us to be in dense energy because we have to occupy a physical body. Everything out in the universe is not in a true physical form like a body. Okay. We kind of think of things through our lens, through our perspective. We see things in a form because we're in a 3D construct. Everything else is outside of this 3D world that we've created. It's in a different construct. It's in a different plane of energy. It's in a different vibration, frequency, and consciousness. And everything outside of this doesn't know anything as being time and space. We think of time as a linear process here in the 3D world. It is not. There is no thing as time or space. But we have constructs on us that make us believe that there are things like time and space. So, as I'm listening to all these videos and all this testimony coming through, and I'm hearing these stories about beings that are able to be physically in some sort of body here, it makes me pause a lot because Earth is so dense. It is truly impossible for beings of light to come onto the Earth plane. Their system, they don't have a physical body in which they can come into, right? Or a physical existence. It doesn't have to be just a body. It can be a plant or a tree or an animal. You have to have some sort of physical construct in order to be able to handle the energy here, the density here on Earth. And their system can't handle it. Just like my physical body has to attune and adjust to be able to pull through the frequency of light language or communicate with light beings. My physical body could not actually travel out into those dimensions at all, but my consciousness can, and my soul can, because it's not in a physical form. So this gets a little layered when we start talking about that. If I were to try and like physically travel into these other frequencies or dimensions, I would explode. My body would actually physically explode. So it can't handle it. So guides, beings of light, angels, they can't travel down to the physical form. They can come through you. They can channel through you. They can channel through your higher self. They can channel through an energy field. But you have to attune yourself to that frequency, and they have to kind of come down a bit, and they have to meet you at a very high frequency to be able to communicate with you. And some of the beings that I communicate are in very high dimensions, eighth, ninth dimension. And I work with the archangels as well. They're in a totally different dimension. And so it's not what we think it is as a construct of like, oh, they're in a physical form. They can just come here. No, they can't. And as I was listening to Dr. Stephen Greer, what was interesting is that he has a theory around this. And because he's been inside some of these agencies, he's actually seen these agencies producing things that appear to be and are as realistic as possible to be UAPs, to be aliens, to be other things that we would as humans think are these actual things. And there's also this whole propaganda campaign out there to think that we are in a threat of some kind. There's a threat to humanity from these things that are coming from off planet. Now, I've worked with dark entities. I have encountered a lot of dark energy in my time as a practitioner, and I have encountered a lot of people who appear to be human beings but are not. They are not full humans. And there's a lot of illusions out there, and I don't think any one person has all the answers to what is going on or have a clear, full understanding of what's going on, because there's a lot of different things happening and a lot of different timelines and constructs that are happening. But one of the key things is that we all, kind of bring our own perspective and our experiences to the table. And so this can cause a lot of confusion and a lot of conflicting thoughts around this. But I will say this. Are there what we would consider to be aliens out into the world, the universe? Yes, absolutely. Are they able to physically withstand being on the earth plane? In my experience, no, because they cannot take on a physical shape or a physical body. Are there hybrids that are half human and half light beings that are on the earth plane to assist humanity at this time? Absolutely. So this is a big one because we do have a lot of people on earth, and I think a lot of people who are doing energy work are these things, these hybrids. They're able to have a physical body, but they also are able to have a light body as well. Their DNA is constructed in a different way to hold these types of crystalline codes. And so, yes, I believe that there are hybrids, just as I believe there are hybrids that carry dark energy with them as well, that are half human and half dark energy. So I believe we have the duality of both on this planet. I believe also that there are dark entities here on the earth that keep people in fear and also in a controlled state. Do I believe the darkness is winning? Absolutely not. They are losing their power, and the light is amplifying. And the fact that we are having this information and these discussions out in the public forum is not a coincidence. It is not a coincidence at all, because we are shifting our consciousness collectively. We are being able to see through things more easily, and we are being able to see the truth for ourselves as well. And, I know that the public, general public around this information has been like, who gives a shit? Who cares? We have aliens. Of course, we have aliens. Like, I think 90% of people that live here believe in this stuff, and they always have. It's like, duh. Do you think we're alone? Do we not understand that we have this vast universe that we can't even get our head wrapped around? For people like me who literally do astral traveling and are able to move between portals and dimensions and all kinds of stuff. I mean, duh. What are we thinking, that we don't have other things that are out in our universe? Of course we do, right? And so what I'm seeing is that the illusions and the veils are starting to dissipate. And people are being able to see things much more clearly for what they really are. And I think the sentiment of this, who gives a crap, right? There's aliens. I got other stuff to worry about. I'm too stressed out. I've got, figuring out how to pay my bills and all this stuff. All the stuff that we are limited by within this 3D world is what is overriding all of this stuff. So I would just say, if there's some sort of event that is happening, just remember to really tune into your own inner compass, your own consciousness, your own understanding, and realize that there is much more beyond what we can comprehend. And this is just a little nugget, a little taste of my own experience. I have a lot of other experiences that I have had that I'll probably get into in later episodes. But this is just one little nugget of experience that I have had within this world. And I thought it was just interesting to share what it feels like from an energetic perspective, what it feels like from the storyline that's being played out right now, and how we are really at an interesting point of our evolution as a humanity here on Earth. And as we're moving into this Aquarius age, that we really are being able to connect in a different way, in a deeper way, with things that are not necessarily able to be seen with our actual eyes. Thanks for listening to this episode. You can find more information on sessions and classes at stinamyers.com or follow me on Instagram and TikTok at The Stina Life. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow and review. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.